Good afternoon, fellow Plexers. Today's video is going to walk you through an Ubuntu Plex server install. And what I have going on here is I have a virtual session of Ubuntu running in boxes on my elementary OS desktop. So I have a virtual version of Linux running inside a standard version of Linux on my desktop computer. So I picked the long-term release, which is 20.04.6, but it should be the same if you want to use 22.04. So let me maximize the window here. So you see that my processor is an i9. I'm only devoting 8 gigs of RAM to this. So all that I've done to prep is I've got some media files here. I created a Plex media folder in my home called media-plex. And let's talk about structure first. Just in case you might go to a Docker container at some point in the future, try to keep all your folders and subfolders lowercase without spaces. So instead of a capital M and a space between Plex and another capital P, it's all lowercase, no spaces. So inside that folder, I recommend using sort folders for every type of library that Plex offers. Movie, music, other video, photos, and TV. In my sort folder for movies, I have 3 different folders to represent 3 different movie libraries I'm going to set up in this video. And all these movies or TV shows are public domain. So inside the documentary folder is one movie, and of course everything is formatted with my filebot expression. I add the TMDB source ID to the folder. While it's not necessary, I also add that to the file name, and then I use filebot along with media info to give me media characteristics about my file name. So this is a 1080p encode with the H.264 encoder. It's 2 channels and the audio is AAC. So if we look through, I've got some old movie shorts that I'm going to use as the kids' movies. And again, the media info information is built in to the file name. So I have some public domain movies for the main movie library, and I have just the one sort folder for music. It doesn't make as much sense to have multiple music libraries, but you might want a second music library to use as an audiobook library. So I would start off with this structure, so in case you want to add audiobooks, or maybe you want a music-mixed library that's separate from your main music, you have that opportunity to do that with this setup. So inside this are some artist folders. And while we're not going to get into it in this video, a Plex music library relies more on metadata inside the music files than it actually does on the folder structure. Unlike a movie library or a TV show library that depends on the folder structure. And I'll link both naming guides in the description of this video. So in the other video libraries, I have a folder called Public Domain Ads, and I have some old TV commercials. And then in the photo libraries, I have a subfolder for National Gallery of Art, and I have some public domain reproductions of paintings that's part of the U.S. government public domain's artwork system. And finally, I have the TV sort folder library, and there's 2 folders, one for a kids library and one for the main. And this is one of the reasons that I point all my TV show libraries to TVDB instead of TMDB, because TMDB, which is the default episode ordering for a TV show library, doesn't have a Looney Tunes entry. These are old movie serials that the TV database decided to create a TV show structure for, so you can easily add them to a Plex TV show library. So I'll show that in the video later on. I make sure all my episode ordering is pulled from TVDB and not TMDB, which is one of the reasons I'm using an example like this. And you'll notice it's season 1930 and season 1931. There's a few odd shows listed at TVDB that use the year instead of 01, 02, and so on. And then my main one, these are public domain episodes of different shows. Like the Beverly Hillbillies, the first season is all public domain. Life with Elizabeth, it's all public domain, but unfortunately I don't have all the episodes. And some of the Lucy shows are public domain. The specials and I think the first season, I'm not sure if the whole show is public domain or not, but what I have is. So that's my folder structure, and it's simply in my home. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the folder and I'm going to star it, so I can simply get to it quickly just by clicking the star entry. So the next thing that I did is I simply went to the Ubuntu software install and I searched for Plex. So these were all installed as snap. I installed the Plex media server. I haven't opened it yet. I installed the Plex HTPC client app, which is the way you should view your Plex server on a computer or laptop, even if the computer or laptop isn't running your server. This is the interface you want to use. You don't want to use the web app to view media, only to manage your server. And then the Plex desktop recreates the web app experience, but with a good media player, just like the HTPC client app has. So you'll see they're all installed, and it's as simple as clicking on something and choosing install. And Ubuntu takes care of it, and all three of those are done through snaps. So let's see what happens when we start the media server. I'm simply going to click on it, which throws up a web browser, and now it wants me to sign in. So I'm going to pause the video here. I have a second Plex account set up that my regular servers aren't tied to, so let me get myself signed in with that and I'll be right back. Okay, so once I sign in with my Plex account, you come to this screen and it just tells you a little bit about how Plex works, and I'm going to click Got It. And this is the first place you'll learn about the Plex Pass. Now the Plex Pass is not necessary to run Plex. I won't be able to show it in this video, but if you're running an NVIDIA GPU or an Intel processor which has the iGPU built in, Plex Pass will enable either NVENC or QuickSync hardware acceleration, which means if you lack bandwidth or a device is incompatible with your media, you can use the hardware part of the GPU or iGPU to have a smooth transcode, and most transcodes of video can easily overload even the most powerful processor you could want. A Celeron processor, Intel Celeron processor with an iGPU is preferred over a Xeon processor without an iGPU. So we'll just skip this, and now I have to name my server. So let me name it Ubuntu dash VM boxes is fine. I'm going to allow access to media outside my home, but I don't know if I can actually enable it with a virtual session. And we wait. Let me pause the video and I'll come back when this finishes. Well, it literally finished a few seconds later. So now we're at the step where we're going to add our first library. So ignore next. Don't click next until you add all the libraries you want to add. So I'll click add library, and I'll start with my 3 movie libraries. I'll click this, and what I'll do is my main movie library first, which I'll just leave named Movies. I'll click Next, and I'll browse for the media. So I have to go inside my home directory and inside my username, and now I can see my folder that I designated for my media. And I'll click inside my movie library folder, and then I'll click inside the main one, and here are the different movies, the folders for the movies. I'll click Add, and then I'll click Add Library. So that's my first one. So let's do this 2 more times for the next 2 movie libraries. Movie, we'll name this one, well, let's just call it Documentaries. We'll browse for the media, inside home, inside my username, inside my media folder, inside my movie sort library, and then I'll click the documentary subfolder and click Add, and then Add Library. So now I have 2. Let's add the last one. Movies, and we'll call this one Dash Kids. Next, browse for the media, inside my home, inside my username, inside my media folder, inside my sort movie library, and then I can click into the kids. That's my phone telling me I have an Amazon notification and a tweet. So I'll click Add Library, and now we can do the TV libraries next. Click on TV Show this time, and this is where it's going to get a little funky. I'll show you the setting we have to change. So this will be my main TV show library, so I'll leave the name just TV shows. We'll browse for the media, same thing, home, username, media folder, library sort folder, and the correct folder we want. I'll click Add, and before I add library, I'm going to go to Advanced and just slide down and change the episode ordering to the TVDB. Now I'll add library. So we'll add the kids library next for the TV shows. So we'll call this one TV Shows Dash Kids. Next, browse, into home, into my user, into my media folder, into the TV sort folder, and then into the actual kids TV folder and click Add. And again, I have to go to the Advanced and change the episode sort ordering to the TVDB. Add library. So now we'll do a music library. We'll just leave this name Music, browse for the media, into home, into my username, into my media folder, into my music sort folder, into the folder I want for music, and click Add. And Add Library. So now we're going to do a photos library. And let's call this Photos National Gallery. Browse for media. Kind of boring at this point, right? You've seen me do this how many times? Into the media folder, into the photos, into the folder I created for this particular set of artwork. Add library, and now we'll do our other videos next. Now let's call this one Old TV Commercials. Now, another idea for another video library is maybe you're sharing with friends and family and you've gone out of your way to collect some fireplace Christmas scene videos from YouTube. I would suggest ones that have an always moving scene, not just a static fireplace with flames rippling that plays music, because if your friends have an older oil ED TV, that might burn an image into their TV. So you want a scene that would change and not just a static one where the fireplace is roaring and the mantle all stays the same. But you could use an other video library for something like that. You could use it for some home family movies that you might have had converted from Super 8. There's all kinds of things you could use an other video library for. So we'll do next. This is our last browse into home, into my user, into my media folder, into the other video library sort folder, and into public domain ads. Click add and add library. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 libraries set up. It didn't take that long. And again, well, let's not go back to elementary. The main thing to start off with for the future is a nice setup for your media. One folder, no spaces, no uppercase letters. Use some sort folders for each of the library types, even if you don't have that type of library now. And then if you're going to have a movie in a kids movie library, break them up here. And the last thing you want to do is to have it parallel. To be in a library folder like this, and then to have all these be individual library folders. 3 movies, 2 TV shows, a music. You don't want that. You want it all nested. That's probably the biggest thing I can convey to you, because then it makes it easier to move to Docker later on, and especially keep it lowercase with no spaces. Once you're into the actual folder, of course, you can have spaces and uppercase letters for your movie folder name and the actual file name, and the same thing with your TV show folders. Once you're into the actual sort folder, uppercase with spaces is fine. Well, it's actually required because it's part of the Plex naming scheme. Alright, so we'll hit next. And now this tells you to get some apps. So I'll hit done. And what's going on here? File not found. Let me pause this and investigate. Well, I think I know why. I had to refresh this, and I haven't signed in as a user yet. I had this set up on a different Linux install, and I'm using the same server account. So I think those were old libraries. Well, actually, let me just sign in here. Okay, so now they came up. Now let me check that theory out by going to the settings. And I really don't script these videos. I get things planned and I just let them roll. And I figure if I run into a mistake like this, it's good for everybody to see me figure something out, because then they might have the confidence to figure things out too. And I can't talk and think at the same time. So I was looking for something. And what do I want here? Authorized devices. I'm going to go to server. All right, you'll see 13 days ago I had an Ubuntu test, and those were the libraries you saw with a triangle. So I'll remove those, and I just have the current install that I just created. And if I go back to general, one of the first things you want to do is click automatically sign in and drop down and save changes. So now if we hit the home icon, you'll see these libraries I just added. And of course, if you're brand new to Plex, Plex is going to have a recommended tab and a library tab. The library tab will be alphabetical, and this is where you can sort to look for things based on categories. So if I wanted to sort by studio, I could do it here. And of course, with this limited public domain library, there's not a lot of choices, but you can drill down that way. I can sort by genre. And this is also where you look for files that might not have matched correctly. But I have a FileBot video, I have a few of them, and if you use FileBot with my custom expressions or the base ones that FileBot comes with, all your media will match up. Good file names make perfect matches. And I've lost what I'm thinking about now. I have to get on to genre. So I could look for unmatched media, or I could look for duplicates. And if you have poor file names, this is where you're going to find missing files. Now the Big Buck Bunny, there's actually 4 different versions. And if I go to play version, you'll see the different ones. And actually I did it this way so I could show you a little trick. So let's go back to our files and into the right movie library. Okay, so these are named for versions and not editions. There's a Plex version, movie version document, there's a Plex edition. So my extra information that I have in brackets shows how they're different, and everything else is the same. So if I wanted these to have individual posters, I could do this. Curly Q brackets, edition, dash 4K. And let me just copy this so I can make changes quickly. And let's call the 1080p something else. Let's call this extended director edition. And let's call the 720p unrated. And let's call the, well, what did I do here? Oh, I guess there's a higher than 4K version. Let's call this one let's call it 8K. This is a surprise to me, but that's how FileBot renamed it, and I didn't catch it. So now that I've renamed those, we'll go back to our movie library. We won't sort for duplicates, and I'm going to rescan that library. Oh, it's not going to work. You need a Plex pass in order for the additions to work. I completely forgot about that. But my file naming will have all these scanned in as separate entries if I had a Plex pass on this second user account. So, not as dramatic as I would hope it would be. So let's go into the documentary library. We have that movie scanned in. Of course, it has a description. If I go into the kids movie library, it has all these movie shorts, which are all in TMDB as individual movies. If I go into TV shows, the recommended is just going to show recently released episodes, recently added in TV shows. If I switch to library view, you'll see the shows alphabetical. We'll go into the kids TV show library. Recommended has the 2 tabs, recently released, recently added. Click the library and it just shows the one series. Click into it and you have your season 1930 and season 1931. And of course it's pulled all the descriptions, as limited as the descriptions might be. We'll click into the music library, click the library tab, and it shows 2 artists and 1 various artist. So I've got this one artist, and this was a public domain album. And before I put the files in this virtual session of Ubuntu, I ran this through FileBot to prep, not FileBot, MusicBrainz Picard to prep them to pull metadata. This is the only one that was listed that had metadata in a database to add to the files. And then these other ones, I simply added metadata myself. I added this cover art to the album. But Plex doesn't have a poster for this artist from the 20s. I could go and find one and add it in myself, but you're really going to go back far to have public domain music. There's nothing from the 50s or 60s or 70s I could have used as better examples. And even though this is only one song, Plex matched it up with this album. It's not really part of this album, but Plex decided it was, and as an example, it's fine for me. So now let's go to our photo library. All those photos scanned in, and there's no metadata to pull from out of a database for this, so you'd have to edit things yourself, and you'd have to be in the library mode, and I don't do much with photos, so I'm not sure how I would edit this. That's interesting, because I'd like it to just say Abigail Adams and Alexander Hamilton and so on. So I'm not helpful there. And now we'll go to the other video library, which just has these old public domain commercials. So that's how you get your Plex server going on Ubuntu. Let's sign into the HTPC client app. And the Plex Player app. This is a good example of any client app. So the first thing you have to do is sign in. Now let me pause this and do it off screen. Okay, so I linked this to my account, and now it lets me choose my libraries. And if you were connected to multiple servers, you would actually choose the server first, and then you could unpin libraries, and everything is with a keyboard. So I'm going to select music on title, hit the enter key, and get rid of that. I'm going to leave the discover feature. I'm going to get rid of live TV by hitting enter, and I'll leave watch list. So I'll hit continue, and it's important to go up to your user, click into it, go to settings, and you want to automatically sign in. And also the experience has options, and this is where, not there, hold on, let me go to videos. The remote quality setting is now set at 12 megabits per second. If you were someplace using your laptop and you had a great internet connection and you had a 4K collection, you could set this to original. The old defaults for a lot of apps were just 4 megabits per second, 720p, but Plex is changing that now to up that original quality. The local quality should always be original. And let me see, what am I looking for? Appearance, nope, experience. I'm looking to change this to a windowed version. So it's under general, and I'll click window. And now if I get some windows side by side here, let's open up the server again. And let's click on the activity window and choose dashboard. And let me start something over in the player app. And again, this is all keyboard driven, so your arrow keys navigate you around. the enter key selects, the backspace key backs you up, and I'm trying to think, I think the F key makes it full screen or window. I can't remember what does the full screen. Is it Control F? Nope. So if I start, let me start in other video, an old commercial. You'll see it appear in dashboard. And if you expand...
I'm June Lockhart, and I've served a lot of fried chicken to my family.
If you expand the dashboard view, it'll tell you information about the video. So it's direct playing, it's some weird video format that the YouTube downloader used. And let me back onto this and do the same thing with a movie. And I just paused it. So you'll see this is an HEVC encode. It's a mono stereo track. Both the video and the audio part of the container are direct playing, and it's telling you the server information. It's telling you the bit rate of the movie. So this is how you get set up. So the last thing we have to do is sign into the Plex Player app. So let me get onto the HTPC app. I'm just backing up. Oh, no, let's stay here for a minute. Sorry. Again, these aren't scripted. Let me open that back up. For anyone new to Plex, this is how you customize Plex. And every client app is very similar. If I wanted to rearrange this, I'd slide left to the three dots, select it. I could unpin it if I didn't have any interest in that library. I'm going to reorder it, and I'm going to bring it down. And now I want to bring my TV library up. So slide over to the three dots, reorder, and I'm bringing that up. And then let me show you something else before we get out of here completely and go to the player app. Let me go into settings on the server, and I'll drop down to manage libraries. If I hover over each one, I get the manage recommendations option. And I am going to add recently released movies to my home and my friend's home. I'm going to tell Plex server not to tell me again about the warning that I'm doing it to my friend's home. And now I'm going to go to the TV show library and hover over manage recommendations. And there's recently released episodes that aren't added to home. I'm going to force that and to my friend's home. And if we go back to the movie recommendations, if you don't like Plex's seasonal movie recommendations that come up at Christmas time, this is where you would uncheck that if you never wanted to see it again. So this is one of the few areas of Plex you don't have to save your settings. Most places you have to save settings. And I'm not going to try to get remote access going, but I can simply disable it, which means this is only for local use now. Normally you would go into your router's settings and you would reserve the IP address of your server hardware, and then you would forward Plex's port of 34400 internally for that same IP address, externally to 34400 or anything within a range in the Plex remote access document. And then once you were done, I would reboot your router, make sure all the settings stuck, and you can't be behind a CG NAT or a double NAT situation. And you'll see this is trying to connect to something, and it's not going to happen. I have UPnP turned off in my router, and my other servers are forwarded manually, so this probably won't find anything. But you would simply apply the external port number that you set up in your router in the field that was here, and you just, so you click the manual specified port, you'd put in the forwarded port, and you'd hit retry, and after a little bit it would say available outside your network. So I'm just going to disable it with this test install, and let's move on to the HTPC client app. And now if I go to movies, well, I may have to exit out of this and come back into it. If I go to movies, well, it's not showing the recently released. And sometimes things get long because I'm not sure of what I do while I'm talking. So let me go in to see if those settings still change or stayed the same. Alright, so I'm sure it'll pick it up eventually. Let's finish up with a Plex player app. Just sign in. Pick my user. Alright, we'll have to go into, I think I can do it here. Go into settings and automatically sign in, save changes, go to home, and I'm seeing my libraries here. So nothing's pinned from this view, so I have to hit more, and I would have to hit the 3 dots and pin all of these. And if I don't want to see any of this, I would have to unpin it, but we'll leave what it is. Now if I back out, you'll see all of them. And again, if you hit the 3 dots, you can reorder. And it's not always easy in a web page, but that wasn't too hard. So now I've reordered that, and you can use this in place of the web app. It's really the same interface. But if you use this, it's got a better player. So if you wanted to play media, this app will take advantage of your video card in your computer and just play things easier. It won't transcode simply because it's a web browser and it doesn't have all the codecs needed to play a video. It's really what you want to use, the HTPC client app, and in a pinch this can play a video, but it plays it fine, but you can use this to do server maintenance. Alright, so that's about it. That's Ubuntu Plex server install, and again, because it's installed via Snap, the permissions are set up automatically. If I had simply downloaded the deb file from Plex, let's show you that. Oh, I'm already open with a web browser. Media server downloads. Choose the distribution. So it would be Ubuntu 64-bit 16.04 or higher. Let's go into my download folder. So if I had installed Plex this way by simply clicking on it and letting the software store open up and installed, I'd have to handle all those permissions manually, and that's a pain in the rear end. So the snap install is the way to go for a small to medium Ubuntu Plex server. I know this is long, but thanks for watching, and this should give you a good start for an Ubuntu server.